Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Class, thank you for being with us today. And your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. And if you would like to call us, we'll pay for the call. And that number, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. And if you'd like to take us with you or listen as you travel or listen while you work, there's a telephone listen line. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, I want to share a quick story with you. I was invited, along with Mrs. Finelli, to an event on Friday afternoon. And it was one of these sit-down kind of events. And I happened to run into one of our instructors. His name is Terry Kelly. And you may know Terry Kelly. He has the same haircut as Kojak, who was on TV. It's really short. As a matter of fact, he shaves his head every day. So that is the haircut that Terry Kelly has. And so I said, hey, Terry, and we chatted for a few seconds, and I was talking to someone else, and Terry Kelly turned to my wife and said, what's with the do? And he was talking about my hairdo. And Mrs. Finelli said, oh, well, we're in a study with Dr. Norm Shealy, and it's a scalar energy study, and it's making his hair get real curly, and it grows like crazy. So our fingernails are growing like crazy, his hair is growing like crazy, mine's growing like crazy, and that's what's up. And Terry Kelly said, can I get some of that?
Well, I don't know. I think I need to let my hair grow out so I can find out if it's getting curly. I've never had curly hair.
Well, yeah, you might want to, seriously, you might want to try it because mine is really, really getting curly. So, and I'm just letting it grow. Normally I have I guess you could call it a banker's haircut, a neat and short, but now I'm just letting it grow. And I don't know when I'm going to stop letting it grow, but this is kind of an interesting experiment, but it is growing like crazy. It's like it's on fertilizer, Dr. Shealy.
Well, that is fascinating. Now, I told you last week about the healer.
Yes,
didn't I?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how she is affecting live blood the same as the scalar energy.
So it is conclusive.
Yes, unequivocal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it's interesting, in our original study, we first tested just adrenal medullin, and I've not been able to find a place to get just one or two tests on adrenal medullin instead of 100. But so we're not able to reproduce that yet. But what we did do was the live blood analysis under the microscope, and that is done by our naturopathic friend, Chief Cloud Pilot, or Dr. Philip Landers. And basically, the blood taken out of the fingertip, put on a slide. Of course, after 20 or 30 minutes, it begins to die. I mean, if you don't do anything within an hour, it's dead blood.
Mm-hmm.
She placed a slide at the beginning of her treatment on the front of the patient's body, and 25 minutes later, the blood still looked normal. That in itself is phenomenally miraculous. Now, that is very similar to what we did when we placed the drop of blood on the slide in front of the scalar device. Then we took blood back from the patient, a new drop out of the fingertip, and looked at it at the end of the treatment. And there was striking reduction in inflammation and clotting and all that, agglutination, if you will, of the red blood cells, etc. So essentially, her work on the patient looks at least as good as having the person in front of the scalar device.
Quite fascinating. And as you're saying this, what was coming to my mind is, what about newborns who are premature? And, they have all kinds of problems and complications, and surgery is difficult, and reactions to chemical treatments, very, very risky. This sounds like this might be something that could be deployed, implemented, used, tried.
Well, yes, having a scalar in the newborn room in the hospital could be very good.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Absolutely non-invasive. You could say to the parents, this isn't going to hurt. There's no pain. There's no fuss. There's no muss. And, there's a possibility that this can help your child. Who would not want to try that? Because I've been in that position. I've been in the position where, we had a newborn who was premature, and, we were offered all kinds of things that were pretty frightening. But this is one of those devices that is non-invasive at all. It's kind of like, being as invasive as having a picture frame, near the child. That's kind of what we're talking about.
Now, let me tell you about two other remarkable cases with scalar. One of them is a 6-year-old who has severe osteochondromatosis, multiple tumors of the cartilage all over his body. It's a congenital abnormality. And in the first month of having the scalar in his room, the one on his shoulder has shrunken considerably. Now, there is no known treatment for osteochondromatosis.
And you said this is congenital, meaning from birth.
Yes, from birth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a genetic defect.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had another 6-year-old who developed what's called panda syndrome. Panda syndrome is an abnormality of the brain which occurs after a streptococcus infection. When I was in medical school, streptococcus infections led to severe kidney disease and sometimes heart disease or valvular disease of the heart. But now this is something relatively recent. It actually damages the brain. They become quite hyperactive, clumsy, and, not as nearly as skilled as they were before. In a month of her exposure to the scalar, just in her bedroom, the family believes, in talking with her and her personality, she's 80% better. And there's no treatment for panda syndrome ordinarily.
Dr. Shealy, you're talking about some remarkable achievements and results. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking about, okay, so you go to the hospital with a child who has panda syndrome. What would they do? What would they do?
Yuck. So what they do is give them some kind of crappy mood-altering drug, Adderall, or God knows what kind of nonsense that damages the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there.
Impairs brain function. Dr. Shealy, what about someone who has seizures, and it's unknown why? Someone maybe who had an MRI or a CAT scan and they can't find anything. Do you think that this is worth a try for someone like that?
Well, obviously. Now, the other thing, however, that I have found in most people with seizures is they are deficient in magnesium and taurine.
Okay.
I've seen, I don't usually see young children with seizures, although I've seen more young children this year than I have in the last 10. But I believe that magnesium lotion and depending upon their size, some amount of taurine could probably bring the seizures under control. So I would probably start with that. But definitely, the nice thing about scalar is it's so safe. I mean, you could have it on your body 29 hours a day, and it wouldn't hurt you.
Dr. Shealy, for those who are new to this broadcast, and we're talking about an adrenomedulin scalar or sapphire-enhanced scalar device, or one that Mrs. Finelli and I have in the bedroom, your device, yours and Luke Cassidy's, and Dr. Sergey Soren's, your invention, your device. We are part of a trial to see what the results are. And I can tell you...
telomeres, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Life extension, prolonging life. And as I mentioned, my hair is getting longer and curlier. Mrs. Finelli's is too. Our fingernails are. And she is sleeping really soundly, like she has not done in 2 decades. Literally. I mean, she hits the pillow and she's out. So it's, that's fantastic. Compared to before, she'd be up all night, restless, tossing, turning. That's not the case anymore. So there is that benefit. And to describe this, how would you describe to our class what this device looks like?
Well, it is 10 by 12 inches, and it's got a plastic cover. And behind the plastic cover, it is I guess I'd call it brass-colored antenna. And on top of the antenna are scattered quite a few particles of crushed sapphire. I mean, it looks as if you just splattered the whole thing with crushed sapphire. And then a little red light down in the right lower corner just tells you that it's functioning. That's it.
And this traverses different frequencies in increments that you have designed, your proprietary design for increasing the frequencies from very, very low to a little higher, to a little higher, to a little higher. It goes up the frequency spectrum, and then returns and goes up the frequency spectrum and returns. And it doesn't make any sound, no noise, no interference, no smell. It's just there, and it's in our bedroom, and we get about 8 hours a day at least of scalar energy. We'll be right back. Even though she'd rather I not say it on the air, you're listening to Sonny Skidmore's favorite radio broadcast. And she loves Dr. Norman Shealy. Who's Sonny Skidmore? Well, she's an owner of KLID AM 1340 in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And she called me over the weekend. Mrs. Finelli took the call. And she had some questions about arterial fibrillation, irregular heartbeat, and magnesium, and the effect of magnesium on that. She knows someone who is suffering from that, and she'd love to know what your thoughts are, Dr. Shealy. And we started talking about it already, but can you shed some more light on magnesium and the benefits or results that could be found for arterial fibrillation and irregular heartbeat?
Yes, actually, it was called atrial fibrillation, and now it's auricular fibrillation, same thing. Basically, it's an irregular heartbeat, often also rapid, 120 to 170 or so. And virtually 100% of these people are deficient in magnesium. Now, interestingly, a blood test of magnesium is a waste of money and blood and time, because 90+% of your magnesium is inside the cells, not in the blood serum. And the only people who have a low blood level of magnesium are either alcoholics, acute, or people who are starved, the kwashiorkor, or the little fat belly people they show from Africa or whatever. The only accurate test is intracellular. You actually do a scraping of the frenum underneath the tongue, put it on a slide, fix it, and send it off to a lab in Medford, Oregon, to get the intracellular content of the magnesium. But you can bet they're going to be deficient if they have atrial fibrillation. So I always recommend magnesium. Ideally, I give them 4 grams of magnesium IV. In fact, interesting interestingly, last April, when I had all of my fights, if you will, after surgery on my back, I had a brief bout of atrial fibrillation, and I insisted, while I was in the hospital, they gave me 4 grams of magnesium chloride IV, and it stopped it immediately.
And Dr. Shealy, were they surprised? Was your doctor surprised?
They fought with me over doing it, but I finally said, "Either you give it to me, I'll get in a cab and go home."
And so here you are telling them that what you need as a medical doctor, and they were fighting with you. But were they? What was the result? You know, no
comment. I don't know. If you've just been proven to be an idiot, you don't comment. And how quickly did this within a couple of hours.
Within a couple hours. So nothing was working up until that point. Then you tried the magnesium IV, magnesium chloride IV, and it worked.
Yeah.
And so it must have been something else. It must have been something else that they tried or did or didn't do, right? Gosh. Right. Yep. Okay, so I was reading about magnesium and how, as you said, people can be deficient in it, or most people are deficient in it. And yes, alcoholism, right? That's what this article says. Now, if someone has severe diarrhea or vomiting or a medical condition that, or even someone who takes water pills, I guess that would be a diuretic like furosemide, those people can be deficient in magnesium as well, right?
Well, actually, yes, and that just aggravates. Remember, statistically speaking, 80% of people are slightly to moderately deficient in magnesium because our soil is totally deficient in magnesium. I'll give you 10 to 1 odds, you give your cat a magnesium supplements.
Absolutely. And you know, something else that I'm going to be doing, I mentioned this on the air, that we're having trouble finding, we had trouble, it was impossible to find anyone who would lime our fields, and we need, a couple 100,000 pounds of lime. Well, we found a source for lime that has a high magnesium content. That's what I want to put on our field. So we're going to have it delivered, dumped in a pile, and then we bought a spreader. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we come back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, you mentioned our soils are depleted from magnesium. And I just called up a quarry during the commercial break we just had, and I talked to the owner of the quarry here in our neck of the woods in Missouri. And they have a lime, they have crushed stone for driveways, this white rock. We built our house out of it. And also when they make the crushed rock, they have a powdered version, which is what we put on our gardens, and it's called lime. Well, their lime is higher in magnesium than the lime that you can get in Springfield, Missouri. So most people don't want the limestone that's higher in magnesium. Well, I do. So we could not get anyone to spread the lime, and we need about 200,000 pounds of lime on our fields. And we need to do that every 5 years or so. So we bought a truck.
Tons.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. And you know how much it is a ton? It's unbelievable. I can't. When we built our house out of stone, and it's limestone, and it's these big rocks that are 6, 8, 10 inches in size, and we mortared them together, and so that's the siding of our house. Well, and it's very hard. It's not chalky. It's very, very hard. Well, to spread this lime and we got our lime rock from Springfield because we like the color of it. Well, the lime that is from our neck of the woods, which is a little bit closer, is heavy in magnesium. And we couldn't get anybody to spread the lime. So we bought an old, probably 1985 truck. It's a diesel truck that's used or used to be used, I believe, for spreading salt on the roads. So we're going to spread lime with this truck that we're going to modify the spreader. And we're just going to take a front-end loader and dump, a backhoe-type front-end loader, and we're going to dump lime, which is heavy in magnesium, in this spreader, and we're just going to drive it around our field. So, and this truck is, same color as most of our equipment. It's rust-colored. But we're going to make it work for, solving that problem. But you're right. We are deficient in magnesium, and the soil is deficient, and this is our solution. So the reason I'm mentioning all of that is we're going to put that same heavy magnesium lime in our gardens, because our gardens are deficient in magnesium as well.
Now, where is it coming from?
It's coming from Mansfield, Missouri, Mansfield.
Would you like to sell 100 pounds that I could use in my garden?
I'll tell you what, Dr. Shealy, I'll bring you a couple 100 pounds. I'll find, it'll probably be in one of those 50-pound sacks. I'll get several of them that we get dog food in, and they're plastic, and I'll bring it to you as soon as we have it delivered. But I just called them. Now their truck is broken, so so they can't deliver their own lime. I've got to find someone else who can deliver it. But we're clearing a pile, or an area for a big pile on top of a hill, and we've mowed the grass, and we're just going to dump the lime on there, and then we're going to use the front end loader. And when I do that, I'll bring you some lime, okay? And it will be this heavy magnesium lime, which most people don't want. And the reason is they say it compacts the soil more than the Springfield version of lime. I don't know if that's really true or not. I haven't experienced it, but that's what some people say. But for me, I want the magnesium. I
agree. And if you've got a good composted garden, you don't need to worry about it, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we've bought lime for our garden, before, but this time we're just going to have a great big lime pile. And can you imagine $8 a ton? That's it. $8 for a ton of lime.
That is phenomenal.
Kind of hard to believe. Yeah. It's very, very, very inexpensive in our neck of the woods.
You pay more than that for 100 pounds, I think, locally.
Oh, absolutely. And when people say, "Wow, you have a stone house," the stone that we put on our house, believe it or not, Dr. Shealy, we bought 220 tons of lime for our stone for our house. And that was the cheapest part of the house, the stone. Because back then I think it was maybe $6.50 or $7 a ton. So, stone is inexpensive, or limestone is inexpensive in our neck of the woods. Other places it's really, really expensive. But, so that's what we're going to do, and I'll bring you some. And so we've been talking about magnesium chloride and how it's not absorbed very well through the digestive system. Is that right, Dr. Shealy?
Well, indeed. Actually, it's not absorbed well because of several things. First of all, if you have any high protein in there, any fat in your gut, or any calcium in your gut, it blocks the absorption of magnesium. Finally, and the single most important thing about magnesium absorption is it's in the distal colon. I don't know any other nutrient, even water, that's absorbed primarily in the distal colon. If your gut transit time is less than 14 hours, it just goes through. And, of course, especially in men more than women, because men tend to be sympathetically dominant, so they have an more active gut. Women tend to be parasympathetically dominant, and they have a more sluggish intestine. But men get diarrhea very frequently from taking any oral composition of magnesium.
Okay. And the article that I'm reading is from WebMD, W-E-B, WebMD.com. And there's a paragraph that says, tell your doctor if symptoms of low magnesium blood levels, example, if you have symptoms, muscle cramps, tiredness, irritability, depression. So, would you say that
those are the most common symptoms in the world. They are.
And do you think that do they link to low?
The average physician does not know it. Also, by the way, heart attack is markedly increased in people with low magnesium. And what's the number one popular way to die in this country? Heart attack.
Yeah. Okay, so how simple is it to get magnesium lotion or spray, Dr. Shealy, from you? What if a person says, you know, I'm sluggish, irritable, I'm cranky, I'm depressed, I've got muscle cramps, I have an irregular heartbeat, or some or all of those, or they're on water pills, diuretics, such as furosemide, which is used for people who have congestive heart failure. People who have, have serious vomiting, diarrhea, poorly controlled diabetes. Aren't all those reasons for taking a magnesium supplement?
Yes. In fact, I think 100% of adults should be on magnesium spray or lotion every day of their life, because it will help many, many, many things.
Okay, and you said every day, and that's what I do. I take it every single day. I use the spray, and I spray it on my chest. Now, Mrs. Finelli likes the lotion. I like the spray. And how easy is it to get it from your website, your magnesium spray lotion?
I hope it's very easy, because it's certainly our number one product. And, it is there. I personally also prefer the lotion, and I put it just on my buttocks. Teaspoon on each buttocks, put on my shorts. But you can put it anywhere, and people who have leg cramps, especially at night, just especially need this on their calves.
Now, when you say leg cramps, are we talking about Charlie horse type cramps? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. So if a person has a Charlie horse in their calves, on their legs, they just apply it to their legs directly?
Right.
Okay. So what causes the Charlie horses, Dr. Shealy? I remember, when I was younger, I would have those.
Well, remember, magnesium deficiency is what causes it. And the muscles, of course, are one of the places where the cells, muscles are just cells. And the major mineral content of a cell is magnesium. That's what keeps the cells functioning properly.
Okay. I was thinking about, I've been asked, are you an organ donor many times in my life. When I go to Division of Motor Vehicles, they want to know if I want to have, that I'm an organ donor on my permit to drive. And here's my question, Dr. Shealy. Do organ donors, do they feel pain? Because doesn't the body have to be alive in order to harvest a heart or lungs or kidneys?
Theoretically, an organ is taken only when a person has been considered brain dead. They're not conscious. So I don't think they would feel any pain. And the interesting thing, of course, is that many, but not all, organ receptor people often have personality changes and emotional things that take place that could be tracked back to the person from whom the organ came. And although I have to say I'm not opposed to organ donations, you couldn't pay me to have organs for somebody else put into my body. I just, karma's karma, and I don't want anybody else's karma.
Mm-hmm. A very, very interesting thought. And what I was thinking is, okay, so let's say, for example, a person is a kleptomaniac.
What a wonderful choice.
Well, I was trying to be kind. So we have a kleptomaniac who is brain dead and provides organs. Now, is it possible that the recipient then becomes a kleptomaniac? Can we talk about that or other features when we come back? Class Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, medical doctor, and if you'd like to learn more about him, you go to his website, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Norm is in Norman, Shealy.com. Dr. Shealy, so we're talking about organ transplants, and I was thinking, and you mentioned this and kind of triggered that thought in my mind, can some of these idiosyncrasies, habits, obsessions be transferred? And I'm thinking, there are people who are cocky, arrogant, right? There are people who are gamblers that just can't seem to not gamble. There are people who don't know how to drive vehicles very well. There are people who break things because they can't seem to hold on, or they're clumsy. There are people who are negative a lot, and kleptomaniacs. I mean, that's just one of hundreds of different kinds of traits that maybe we wouldn't want to have with a transplant. Is it possible that could happen? That we could, become cocky or arrogant or a compulsive gambler or afraid of bugs or
psychopath?
Want to be a politician? I mean, right. I mean, we might be normal at one moment and then have a transplant and want to be a politician. I mean, what could be worse than that?
The worst of that. That's the criminal.
So is that possible?
Anything's possible, absolutely. Interestingly, when I was 16, my mother took me to a street psychic that was considered very good. She said, "You'll be well known, but you'll never be president." I said, "Thank God." Even at 16, I considered it a curse to be a politician.
Yeah.
I haven't changed my mind.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, let's see. I was going through some things that I thought were kind of interesting. The royal wedding, Dr. Shealy. I don't know if you've been plagued. Everywhere I seem to go, I'm seeing stories about the royal wedding, and the words that come to my mind are just two: royal fleecing. I just can't get over how people in the United Kingdom are willing to put up with these excesses. For example, the newlyweds went from the Windsor Castle to the reception in a 1968 Jaguar XKE. Absolutely stunningly beautiful designed car. Probably one of the finest looking English cars ever made, along with the Aston Martin DB4. Okay. Well, this was converted to be an electric powered car. So it had a battery bank. They took the gas engine out. They disemboweled it, if you will, and they made it into an electric car at the cost of $471,500. That's insane. But they're making a statement like, even the royals are switching from gasoline and diesel to electric-powered cars. And so that was one part of the fleecing. Another, these are just small parts of the fleecing of the royals on the subjects. The royal wedding gown, Meghan Markle's gown, was $300,000.
Obscene, vomiting, obscene.
Frankly,
I wouldn't spend 2 seconds watching that crap. I'm not the least bit interested in whether they get married or not.
I agree.
Anything else to do with the royal family. I think the whole concept of royalty is repugnant to me. Ain't nobody royal enough for me to bow down to them.
Well, many of them believe they are descendants from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene.
Oh, well.
No kidding.
Many people believe a lot of nonsense, including all of the leftistas.
Well, my screens were littered with all kinds of information that I could spend or waste time reading about the royal wedding. Unbelievable. It seems like, what are we going to do? We're in so much trouble. What are we going to do? Our image is down. Hey, let's have a wedding. Hey, let's get, what can we do? We can have a black guy, do the ceremony. And what can we do to improve our image? Well, maybe we can have a mixed race wedding. Okay, that's what they did. That's literally what they did to improve their image. The Jaguar, or the electric Jaguar, unbelievable to me. What a waste of time and money, and what a fleecing they have done. We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, and if you'd like to get the same newsletters that I receive, you can go to normshealy.com, normshealy.com, and you can sign up for the same newsletter. Your email address will not be sold. It will not be given to anyone else. It's just for Dr. Shealy to send you the often received newsletters, the same one that I get. I suggest that you consider doing that. George in New Hampshire, welcome. You're on with Dr. Norm Shealy.
Hi, Dr. Shealy. Hi, Vincent. How you doing? Good. Do you mind if I just touch back on that organ donation? Because I've got a couple of attacks there, just briefly, that, you covered some, but I think there's some other aspects to it that you might find interesting.
Of course.
All right. What they said is, like, in one case, they had a liver transplant, and they said the patient's blood type changed as a result from, his original blood type from the person who was the donor. And were you aware that David Rockefeller had as many as 6 heart transplants, and he lived to be about 106? And Dick Cheney has had at least 4 and possibly 5 heart transplants.
Well, now, the latter one is not someone I would choose to emulate, but that's okay.
Right.
And the first one you mentioned is even worse. I mean, remember, the evil empire is run by the Committee of 300, and the Rockefellers have been part of that since day one.
Yeah, and I think they've been directly responsible. One of their ancestors, the original Rockefeller, I think he used a lot of his wealth to really build up pharmaceuticals that were petroleum-based. And they did away with a lot of the people who were naturopaths or herbalists or things like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust a Rockefeller to tell me the time of day.
Well, like I say, you're in good company with your associates there, and I really feel that, like you said, we'll never make it to presidents, but our good looks and personality will get us everywhere, I guess, huh?
Hey, why can't everybody be perfect like us?
Right. And modest is in a chapter review. I'd just like to say, too, when they harvest the organs, they will give, like in England, for example, they'll give you anesthesia to the person who they're harvesting the organs from.
Right. Yeah,
in this country, they don't. And
yeah.
Dr. Shealy and Vincent, I'm sure you've heard the same, that many people have revived when the doctors were within hours or days, even weeks of harvesting their organs, and the family would say no. And what would happen is that when the patient revives, they will recite verbatim the conversations at the bedside with the family, trying to induce the family into donating the organs of their loved one, and also that I've heard that brain dead is actually almost fictitious. In other words, medically speaking, and I can't speak to this exactly, but I've heard doctors talk about it, who, like of your kind, Dr. Shealy, you put the welfare of the patients ahead of all else. In other words, they said that there's no such thing as brain death, but a heart can be worth as much as $1 million. A donor heart could be worth $1 million to the hospital.
Well, they can't have my toenails even. So I don't want to take the chance that I'm invading somebody else's body or mind. And I don't mind dying. That's a minor thing. It's happened, hundreds of times already in past lives. So dying is no big deal, but I don't want to be tortured. And people do often come out of deep, deep coma, called brain dead, and report pain from certain things that were done while they were supposedly in coma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Vincent, about this?
My thoughts are very simple. I've had this discussion with our family. No one in the Finelli family is an organ donor. No one. And because there are the possibilities that, yes, you can come out of it, and two, there is the monetary incentive for harvesting organs. So I think maybe there's a rush to judgment that maybe, the person who is the donor, he's brain dead, so let's go harvesting. I'm not up for it. No one in our family's up for it. And we're also concerned about the possibility of excruciating pain while it's being done. So those are our thoughts. Now, I don't know for sure. And I've never met anyone who has had an organ harvested who has survived it, who has told me firsthand that it was excruciatingly painful. What comes to my mind is an eye. So, a person's banged up in an accident. They say the person's in a coma, brain dead. Let's take the eye and the other eye and some other organs while we're at it. I'm not up for it. I am not up for it.
The other thing is, too, they say people who have had the organ transplants have reported that in dreams they actually see the person whose organ was donated in many cases, and they said that they had never met the person, but when they eventually, many times, they'll look up the loved one's family who was the donor, and they'll find out that the person that they're seeing in their dreams is actually the person who was the donor, and they'll see photographs of them, or they'll describe what they see. And they had one young woman who she received a young man's heart transplant, and she actually started to get a strange attraction to other women, which she didn't have before. But they said that she befriended the mother of the young man who was the donor, and the mother said that it was almost like having her son again alive, because many of the characteristics of the son had transferred to the one who was the donor. And there was one other thing I just want to say, and then I'll get off. It's just that they also said that they've had situations where people actually died in a similar manner to the person who was the donor, even in similar accidents that originally had had occurred to the original donor.
Everything we do in life has its philosophical meaning and purpose, and our reaction to it is equally critical. These are the types of things people should discuss in depth with their family members, in my opinion. It's your option to make the choice of what you want. But personally, I don't really want my organs inside. Who would want the organs of an 85-year-old body, even if I'm in good shape? But I don't want them in somebody else's body, and I don't want anybody else's body in mine. So that's just my philosophy. But I'm not opposed to people doing it if that's what they want.
I agree with you. Well, gentlemen, I know you got a lot to cover, but it was very nice talking to you this morning.
George,
take care.
George, before you go,
yep.
can you stay with us for just a minute or two?
Sure.
You mentioned something very interesting. I'd love actually a couple of things I'd like to have you be part of the discussion about. This one is homosexuality. Now, Dr. Shealy, is it possible that if an organ from a homosexual is well,
the ultimate question. Oh, now that one. Oh, I hope that goes in that body goes part of a body goes into a flaming fundamentalist. Oh dear.
So is the answer that a person who is not a homosexual could become a homosexual with a heart or some other transplant of a vital organ from a homosexual? Is it possible that that's transferable?
Well, everything else we know, I would say absolutely.
Okay, so
a new requirement for those who are getting organ transplants.
Yeah. I mean, if I were up for an organ transplant,
how about transgender?
Yeah. I mean, it could really change your life for the worse. But okay, so that was one question. And then, George, I was hoping you could stick around for this. I was reading an article about people who live in small rural areas are 8 times happier than people who live in congested cities. Now, in my case, I can say that is absolutely true. I don't know about the 8 times. Maybe it's 8,000 times. I'm 8,000 times more happy, living on a farm than I would be living in a city. And I was wondering, does that hold true for you, George? And then, Dr. Shealy, I'm pretty sure I know how you feel. George, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'd say, for one thing, you don't have the congestion, you don't have the traffic, and they usually, I find in a rural community, I moved from Boston to northern New Hampshire, and I just found that, in other words, it's very different dynamics where you had a more multicultural community there, and then over here, it's probably 70% French Canadian. And they take time to really accept you. And thankfully, they've accepted me over time. But it's like, I found that, like, you can literally almost throw a stone and hit a mountain behind me that I'm looking at behind me in the house. And it's like, the air is better. And like I say, I believe it will lengthen your life.
I totally agree, and I'd love to hear what Dr. Shealy has to say about that when we come back. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. George in New Hampshire's with us. And Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts about, rural living compared to city living?
Well, interestingly, I've looked that up during the break. Mm-hmm. And now, in general, people who live in rural areas 2 years shorter than those who live in cities. And the reason is increased smoking, increased obesity, and, of course, exposure to the Satan poison.
Wow.
So, for the first time in the history of the world, the rural people living less longer even than city people, and it's largely because still more people smoke and more people are fat, and so it goes. Isn't that fascinating?
Well, I believe it, and I'll tell you why. A couple of weeks ago, our son was traveling through Arkansas, and he called, and he was visiting a friend, and he and his friend were absolutely sick as could be, vomiting and so forth. And he said, "Dad, I think we have been poisoned by crop dusting. They were spraying with airplanes, and there's no way of getting around. If you're traveling, on a byway through an area where farmers are crop dusting their fields, you are being poisoned." And we think that is what happened, because all of a sudden he was sick and vomiting, and it was just right out of the blue. And so was his lady friend. So very interesting that I agree with that, and it's a problem. And how do you get these idiotic farmers to stop this nonsense, to stop polluting the planet with poisons that they're told are safe? It's a really, really good point that you've made. And it's unsettling, because we thought, well, we moved here for cleaner air, cleaner water, there's less buses and trucks, with exhaust pipes, and there are less power lines, and there are less microwave towers and television towers, and transmitters of all kinds, less radar, all the things that we want to avoid. There's less of it out here in the countryside. But if you look at why do people go to cities, well, there's higher paying jobs, right? There are more job opportunities in cities. Yeah, the jobs are easier. Heck, is it easier to be on a farm tractor, or is it easier to be at a keyboard, well, it's easier to be at a keyboard, and it's less dangerous to be at a keyboard. But people in cities have higher educations, typically, than people in the rural areas. But rural areas have more sense of village, more sense of getting together and knowing your neighbors. Even though you're farther apart, there seems to be a greater connection with your neighbors when you're outside the city than when you're inside the city. Heck, when we lived in the suburbs on the East Coast, we lived there like 15 years or so, roughly. And in that city block, if you will, not city block, that rural suburban block, there were 6 houses, you know. And in all that time, I only met about 1, 2, 3 of our neighbors. 3 in all that time. So even though you're, you know, close together, doesn't mean that you actually, you know each other. And that's the way it was. So, George, your thoughts? Well,
I know they said during World War II, with the gas rationing and restricted travel and restriction on, you know, the gasoline for the cars, they said asthma went down dramatically. And, you know, a lot of it comes down to, you know, and I know, you know, they can transfer you anywhere they want. I think all 3 of us have thrived because we're educated, because we're of the type of mind that we're inquiring, we want to improve. And I never smoked. I wasn't really much of a drinker, and I didn't burn the candle at both ends. I know the same thing with you, Vincent, and I assume the same thing with you, Dr. Shealy, as well, correct?
Yeah. You couldn't pay me to smoke.
But I've seen a picture of you, Dr. Shealy, and you look a lot younger than your chronological age, Vincent. The same with you, and the same with me. I see people 10 years younger than me that look like they're actually 5 to 10 years older than me.
Right.
And I'm not bragging about that, but I'm just saying is that maybe we weren't the cool kids in school. We, getting wasted and drugs and all the rest of it. You know what I mean? But look at how it paid off.
I thought, George, you mentioned something very interesting, and I was thinking back to my high school days, and I went to an all-boys school for high school, but I knew some of the girls from the surrounding high schools, and I saw some of them later, at a like a 25th reunion from high school, and the ones that were really, really pretty and fully developed, when they were in high school, the ones that had matured very quickly, physically, aged very quickly. And the ones who were, not as mature back then looked a lot healthier and a lot younger than the ones who were fully matured. And the same is true for the guys. Dr. Shealy, have you experienced the same thing?
Well, absolutely. Everything affects everything. I've been doing lots of studies while we were doing this. Actually, every state has a different mortality. The lowest in the country is Alabama at 72.9 average life expectancy. And interestingly, the longest-lived people in the country are Seventh-day Adventists. They average 89 years, which is 10 years longer than the overall average of the country as a whole. Missouri is average for the country as a whole about 78 or 79%, although blacks live 7 years longer than whites in this state. Mormons live only 85 years. They don't quite as well as Seventh-day Adventists. Now, interestingly, the longest lived that I could find is in Boston Back Bay. That's the elegant upper-class part of Boston, 91.9, versus Roxbury, which is a suburb of Boston, 58.9. Aren't those things fascinating?
Okay, so what would you attribute that to? George, you have a feel for what would cause that?
The difference is lifestyle. It's obesity, it's drug use, it's suicide. All of those things affect the whole. And so rural, poor areas, city or not, don't do as well as city areas which are wealthy. So to be wealthy and high education anywhere in the country, you live longer than to be poor, etc. It's that simple. Now, again, poison is everywhere. Our rain has 65% of the rain throughout the country has Roundup in it. It's amazing. Maybe it doesn't rain in Back Bay, Boston. I don't know.
Dr. Shealy, you said Roundup is in the rain, too, now?
65% of the rain falling throughout this country has Roundup in it. This is a study reported a year and a half ago. Organic California wine has 35% as much Roundup as non-organic wine, which is, fed Roundup. So it comes down in the rain.
So in other words, it's leaching into the water systems, the waterways.
Oh, yeah, everywhere. The only way you can have organic is to have a purified air in a greenhouse.
Yeah, pretty unsettling, isn't it?
Well, it's all part of the Rockefeller Committee of 300, game. How they're not getting poisoned, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because the Queen is breathing the same filthy air in England that her subjects are breathing, and it's quite polluted. There's no way around. I mean, she can stay in the castle, but it's still, unless they've got some air purification systems that they're not telling us about, she's breathing similar air.
I do know that I don't even like to put the name royal in front of family. Let's just say whatever their last name was or is. Queen Elizabeth and her family are eating only organic, because I saw a blip about it. They showed the farms where they raise the food for the quote-unquote royals, and they said it's all organic, very strictly monitored, so they don't eat the regular foods by any stretch. They're eating natural, organic foods, and they're very long-lived. If you looked at least Queen Elizabeth, her mother, and whatnot, not all of them, but they seem, especially the woman's side of the family, seem to be long-lived.
Okay, so Dr. Shealy, what do we plant in our gardens right now in order to improve our longevity potential?
Well, unfortunately, there's nothing that can protect you from Roundup in your own garden. But again, what you want is as many vegetables as possible and fruits that are possible. And you want the more colored vegetables and fruits, the darker the color. Purple, for instance, like eggplant, and you could buy purple cabbage, even purple carrots. All of those have higher antioxidants than the non-dark colored. But the best you could do is grow your own food.
Mm-hmm. So let's make sure we heard this very clearly. The more purple, the more antioxidants. Is that right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And I remember the term salad greens with an S being used when I was growing up in the 1950s and the 1960s. Eat your salad greens. So, like, not just one kind of green, multiple kinds of greens.
Of course, spinach, kale, chard, lettuce, of course, Chinese cabbage. All of the greens are better than most, except I am growing purple carrots for the first time this year.
Yes. That sounds great. And all right, so I was at Sam's Club weeks ago buying some onions. And you can buy them by the colors. You can buy white onions, you can buy yellow onions, or you can buy red onions. So does the same thing hold true for onions, Dr. Shealy?
Yeah,
we're trying to get more toward the purple?
Yeah, the red or purple onions are going to be stronger.
Okay, and are they better for you?
Oh, yeah, it's stronger being antioxidant. What you need is Orax. Now, it's time to mention something. I have now for several years been drinking for breakfast a high-protein, high ORAC, that is antioxidant capacity, breakfast drink. It's very simple. We're about to make it available on our website. You can get 6 1,000 ORACs, which is equal to 6 excellent servings of fruits and vegetables, to add to your whey protein isolate. And that, I just like it because it's so simple and it's so healthy. And within another month, we will have it all in a daily package instead of having to mix two things. But even now, it takes you about 2 minutes to mix it.
Okay. So, do you have a name for it that we can start looking for in a couple months?
Well, there'll be a special announcement about our special high ORAC food, ORAC food.
Okay. And what does ORAC stand for, Dr. Shealy?
Oxygen reduction, oxygen, let's see, RO. Oxygen, oxygen reduction capacity, it's the capacity of the material to absorb free radicals. That's what it's really referring to.
Okay. So a couple of months we'll, and you'll be making that announcement here as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That sounds great. And is this, Dr. Shealy, is this something that we can bring with us? So, for example, I frequently travel to get things for the farm, and it may involve a 3, 4, 5 hour journey each way. Is this something that I could bring with me and consume?
In fact, I actually go ahead and mix it for day by day, even when I'm gone for a week or two.
Okay.
And I take it with me in a little plastic bag.
Okay. All right. Dr. Shealy, for those who have been advised to have a colonoscopy, is that something that you think should be done, shouldn't be done? And do you recommend any preparations for it? If so, and what about the other side after the procedure is done?
Now, if you have any kind of irregularity in your bowel movement, that is constipation or diarrhea or both, then I think it is well worth considering. Now, on the other hand, if you have one and preferably two what I consider decent bowel movements every day, I would check your urinary indican, INDICAN. If it is 0, I don't think you need a colonoscopy. If your indican is elevated, yes, get one. It's an indication of the indican test tells you whether or not you digesting your food properly.
Okay, it's a urinary indican test?
INDICAN. Available at any lab test now.
Okay, at any lab test now. That's the name of a company that performs lab tests. So anylabtestnow.com. And so the indican test, is it just pee in a jar kind of thing? Yeah,
in a little cup at the lab, yeah.
Okay, pee in a cup. Okay, that doesn't sound very invasive at all. All right, and so if the result is 0, a colonoscopy is not indicated. If it's higher than 0, colonoscopy is indicated?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for someone who is going to have a colonoscopy, are there any recommendations for prior to the colonoscopy?
Live as close to the hospital as possible because you have to take an extremely strong laxative the night before.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what about after the colonoscopy? Can you resume normal activities immediately, wait a day? What do you do?
Resume normal, but I would definitely add more probiotics, and we should talk about that afterwards.
All right, we'll be right back. George, you're welcome to stay with us and contribute to the conversation.
Sure.
George, who's in New Hampshire, is with us. I was just thinking that, several months ago, I was accused of not following medical advice. Vince, you're not following medical advice. And and I said, well, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Well, no, you're not. I said, well, yes, I am. I'm following Dr. Shealy's advice. And ultimately, I got fired by my pulmonologist, which now she thinks that she's having second thoughts because I said, why did you fire me? And one of the reasons was, you're washing out a nebulizer in water. Yeah. And followed by sterilization with Nixol and colloidal silver. Yeah, how else am I supposed to do it? So I guess my permanent record says I'm not following medical advice. But there you go. So I am following medical advice. The best medical advice I know of. Dr. Shealy is providing that. So, Dr. Shealy, we're talking about colonoscopies and probiotics. Please continue.
Well, probiotics, to me, everybody should have all fermented vegetables that are not cooked are worth having. In other words, if you make your own kraut at home and don't, can it, you can make it in the individual can, but not boil it. Or, of course, kefir or kombucha tea, or especially Greek plain yogurt with no sugar or fruit in it. Those are excellent things to help your gut have the normal bacteria in it. There's also the one I like, if you're going to take it as a capsule, GR8, number 8, from Now Products, has 8 different probiotic bacteria in it.
Yeah, we take it. We have it here. George, your comments? Probiotics?
You know what I noticed is that you've been doing it, and I'll bet Dr. Shealy does it too. I love being able to go in and get a spoonful of yogurt. I'll dip in once, and I'll just put it in my mouth at various times of the day, especially like if I've drank coffee. Usually do it before I drink coffee because they said the caffeine a lot of times will kill a lot of the good bacteria in the stomach. But I've been doing that with different things, the one spoon aspect, and I'll just say this. They had this Renaissance gentleman. He was quite a carouser, and when he was about 46 years old, over a period of a few days, he started to really reduce the intake of his food, and he was getting by on, I'd say, like bird-sized portions of food. And they said he lived to 104 back in the 1500s.
Well, yeah, it has been demonstrated that people who, especially after age 50, who reduce the caloric intake live longer and are healthier. And the main reason for that is getting rid of excess fat.
Interesting you say that, Dr. Shealy and George. That's what I've been doing for several years now. I've switched from a dinner-sized plate that we have to a dessert-sized plate. So for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I will just take out a dessert-sized plate, which is much, much smaller. And not only that, but I don't fill it as much as it could handle. And I'm eating less, and I'm very careful about what I eat, and it's working. It really is working, because I look around and I see people have way bigger waistlines than I do. Way bigger.
Actually, I am back down to what I was at age 16 in my waist. And I was never more than 2 inches bigger than that, but I have gotten back down to age 16 waist.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I see you, Dr. Shealy, the picture of you. You remind me of a kid in a lot of ways, just from your outline and picture. I'm not kidding, and you act like a very young, youthful man with the vitality you have.
I still feel 26, George.
And you ought to see him race around. He really does. I know. I was at a convention, and coming down the main aisle was Dr. Shealy, and he was flying. Well, he was like running, and that's just a couple of years ago. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your medical experience, ideas, and solutions. And George, thank you for doing the same, sharing your thoughts and suggestions. I really appreciate it. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.